Hello folks, Scott here with the My Monthly Hero August 2020 kit. This was shipped to me August 10th. I received it on August 15th, a little bit longer than normal. I think we all have to pay some special attention to our post office these days. Anyway, this is our Staycation Kit. We have our 6x8-inch stamp set here that features everybody lounging in the backyard or out on the deck. That looks like mom in a lounger, dad in a hammock, a couple of kids in a pup tent, little tent. There's all sorts of little additional images here, plants and birds and butterflies and books and tables and chairs and wine and a wine bottle. There's a fire pit. We've got a watering can, a number of plants, an empty pot, some wind chimes. It looks like we have 5 sentiments here: my own little paradise, a place of total bliss, my happy place, my private sanctuary, and thinking of you. And then we have like these 2 qualifiers: greetings from, colon, hello from, colon. So you could pair those up with hello from a place of total bliss, or greetings from my happy place. We've got a little cat there, this interesting little basket chair. That's our 6x8-inch stamp set. And then we have 23 coordinating frame cuts. Looks like it cuts out every image, every icon in that stamp set. And then we also get 1 greetings fancy die. This says greetings from. That looks like lots of fun. Nice big sentiment die. 23 frame cuts, 1 fancy greetings die. We also get some extras in this kit, including a big stamp pad. This is the Summer Twilight Palette Reactive Ink Pad. Summer Twilight. I wonder if those colors would make a nice summer twilight. Really interesting colors. And we also get 5 postcards. 2, 3, 4, 5 postcards. These feel like they're on really good paper. I wonder if these are good alcohol marker papers. This should be interesting. I think I should probably do 5 postcards using this set. Maybe 5 regular cards and 5 postcards. Very interesting. And then I did get 1 little extra in my kit. I have no idea why, whether they like me. They really like me. This is the Hero Hughes gems. Some nice kind of pinkish, reddish, almost magenta type gems in a couple of different sizes. I don't know why I got those. Those seem totally extra. They're not listed with this kit, but I'm always thrilled to receive any little extra bits that you want to give me. So it looks like we're not traveling this year for vacation. We are doing a staycation that may prove to be a little more interesting in New York City than in the rest of the world. Stay tuned and see where I go on my staycation. And here we have my 10 cards inspired by the My Monthly Hero August 2020 Staycation Kit. Actually, we have 5 postcards and 5 cards. So I did use the postcards that were provided in this kit. I like the fact that our postcards were all 6 inches by 4 inches, 4 inches by 6 inches. So that gave us a little bit more room to play with. I thought all of our postcards should be single layer since they're not going in an envelope. And my eye was really drawn to this wicker chair, this hanging basket chair, and the fact that nobody's sitting in it. Now, there's no way you can possibly put any of these people in this chair, but then I saw the cat and thought the cat belonged in that nice wooden wicker chair. So for our first card on a postcard, we have greetings from my own little paradise, with that sweet little cat sitting there inside that great wicker hanging chair. I did a lot of masking for this. I took that old mask that I had made for my Eagle card, I think in the June kit of this year, and laid it down on my postcard, and then I ink blended some soft sky ink in that space. Then I cut a mask for our chair, and I cut the center of that pillow out. I laid the mask down where I thought the chair would go, and then I stamped the cat inside that open space. Then I laid my stamp on top of the mask to make sure I got it lined up, picked it up with my MISTI, removed this mask. I cut a mask for the cat and masked off the cat, and then stamped the chair around the cat. That all worked perfectly. Once I removed all the masks, everything came together very nicely. I was very pleased with that. I stamped all of this using VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Once I removed the cover mask, I stamped the sentiments using that same Versamark ink. We then went to dinner, and I came back an hour or two later and started coloring this. Now, I wasn't sure what this postcard cardstock was. It seemed nice, but I wasn't sure if it would take alcohol markers. I didn't think it would move well with watercolors, so I decided to color this with my Prismacolor colored pencils. So this is all colored with my colored pencils. As I was coloring that, my sentiments started smudging. So the cardstock that these postcards is made of, I think, is just slightly coated, just a little bit coated, so that didn't let the ink actually set completely. So in order to save this postcard, I stamped the sentiments again on just some Neenah 80-pound cardstock. Fussy cut those out, glued those over my original stamped sentiments. Since I had an extra piece there, I decided to go ahead and cut the frame for this little shape using some brush mirror blue cardstock. I glued that down very nicely. I then needed a little extra on the top and bottom of this. I dug out some pale blue glitter tape that I had in my stash. I cut those down to strips, added those to the top and bottom. Really sweet card. Greetings from my own little paradise. That cat looks perfectly cozy in that chair. So this is fairly thin for a postcard, so I figured all of my next postcards, I would just cut another piece of cardstock the same size, 4x6, and do all of my coloring and decorating on that extra cardstock, and then glue it down to our postcard blank. So our next postcard is our Thinking of You card. With Mom in her lounge chair and the kids in the tent, I cut a piece of Neenah Solar White cardstock. I figured I'd use my alcohol markers for this. I stamped all of the images using Memento Tuxedo Black ink. I did cut a mask for the right side of Mom's legs. I cut a mask for the pitcher of drinks. I cut a mask for the left side of the tent just to do a little bit of layering there. Once I stamped all of our images, I started coloring this with my alcohol markers. And I wanted something in the background, but didn't want to have to draw it. So I actually have this old Doris picket fence border die, and I thought if I die cut that from a piece of masking paper, I could lay that on my cardstock and then use my alcohol markers through that mask and get a fence back there. Well, obviously, Ink-a-dink-a-doo stamp masking paper is not a stencil. And I did get some blurry lines on that picket fence, but I decided not to worry about it. That was in the background. It certainly gave us the suggestion of a picket fence back there without having to be all anal and perfect about it. So I just left it as is, finished coloring the sky and the grass with my alcohol markers. I added some of the tufts of grass using a couple of Hero Arts inks. I colored all of the images using my Spectrum Noir alcohol markers. This came out really nice. I did use the My Favorite Things mini cloud stencil to add a little suggestion of clouds in the sky there. And I stamped that sentiment again using Memento ink, Thinking of You. I decided our wood chimes were hanging from a nearby tree that we just don't see. I was thinking about matting this on a black mat, but then I realized, no, I don't want to add any layers of cardstock, so I just drew a thin black frame around this whole panel. I glued that down to our postcard, and that's our Thinking of You card. I think this is exactly what Hero Arts had in mind when they created this little staycation stamp set. Mom and the kids in the backyard, it's a staycation, thinking of you. Okay, that took a little bit of time, and I really didn't want to spend tons of time coloring the entire postcard on all 5 of these cards. So I thought we'd work with some vignettes for these next cards here. So for my 3rd postcard, we've got "Hello from my private sanctuary," with Dad in his hammock and the little fire pit right there. So for this card, I die cut a piece of Bristol smooth cardstock. I wanted to do some watercoloring on this. I stamped the large fern stamp from our stamp set using Hero Art's lime green shadow ink. Stamped those top and bottom. I stamped Dad in his hammock and our fire pit using Memento tuxedo black ink, and then I colored those all using my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. Just adding a little bit of background right around all of the images gives us that little vignette feel to that. I thought this came out very nicely. I even added a little bit of color into our ferns so they weren't just white in the center. Finally, I stamped the "Hello From" sentiment using Hero Art's Fresh Lawn ink, and I stamped my private sanctuary using Hero Art's Summer Sky ink. Now to pull that into my image a little bit, I took one of my Micron pens and added a little bit of a black shadow behind the sanctuary there. That gave us a little bit of black in our sentiment, kind of pulls that all together. I really like that extra length on these postcards. It really worked well for these borders on the top and bottom. "Hello from my private sanctuary." Dad's enjoying a little bit of lemonade, getting ready for the kids to come out with their marshmallows to make some s'mores at the fire pit. I really liked this little top and bottom border with the ferns here, so I thought I would continue that on my next card. This is postcard number 4, and we have "I'm not drinking alone, I'm social distancing." Oh, how topical. We had that great little bottle of wine, or maybe it's a liquor bottle, stamp in our stamp set. So I decided to stamp those top and bottom on this. I used the dusty blue Hero Arts ink and again the lime green Hero Arts ink. I stamped those across the top and bottom, of course, using my Misty. I stamped our 3 images here using Memento tuxedo black ink. I didn't have to do any masking with these. With careful placement, I was able to get them all right close together without having to do any masking at all. I did create this sentiment using my Silhouette software. This is using the Smoothie Shop font. I thought that went really well with our little cast iron table and chair there. I printed that directly on my card panel. This again is on Neenah 80-pound card stock because I was going to use my alcohol markers. Simple coloring on our images there. I did add a little bit of color to the bottles, but I really thought it was nice that they were empty. They have already been used. I think this is very topical. And heaven knows, I found myself drinking alone once or twice in the last few months. What do they say? You're not drinking alone if the cat's home. Okay, that of course got me thinking about the pandemic and the situation that we're in. I'm still on furlough. I haven't been to work since the middle of March. So for my 5th postcard here, we've got "Nurturing yourself is as important as nurturing others." Oh, baby. Isn't that the truth? I really like this card. It feels like a little sampler, a little needlepoint sampler or something like that to me. I really like this a lot. I used my smaller fern stamp from our stamp set to stamp the top and bottom borders. This time I used the Hero Arts Fresh Lawn ink. I also used that ink for these 2 little flower sprays here. Now these are from an old Simon Says stamp kit. This is the Kind Flowers stamp set. I really like this set because it has absolutely matching floral sprays that go left and right. So I pulled that out of my stash, added the extra sprays of greenery here and there. I stamped our images using Memento tuxedo black ink. I did make a little mask for our watering can so I could stamp the pot and the flower behind that. Those are 3 different stamps. I colored those all with my alcohol markers. I also added some greenery to our leaf sprays there. Then finally, I took a Pigma Micron pen and my T-square, and I added our little lines and dots on the left and right, and across the center, our nice little needlepoint sampler here. Nurturing yourself is as important as nurturing others. I did print that sentiment using my Silhouette software, and that is the typewriter hand font. I gave a little bit of bold to the yourself there, just to draw a little bit more attention there. I truly believe, especially in these times, that nurturing yourself is just as important as nurturing others. That's our 5 postcards. All of these are absolute one-layer cards, except for this, which has some extras glued on top of that. I don't think any of those will have problems making it through our postal service. Now, as I said in my unboxing, I thought a staycation for myself living in the city would look a little bit different than a staycation for most of the rest of the world or other people that are not living in big cities. So I had a few days free before I received this kit, so I went ahead and I started working on some backgrounds. I threw caution to the wind and said, I can create some backgrounds. I did, of course, create a backyard background with a real, actual die-cut picket fence. Then I created a couple of wall unit backgrounds with TVs in them, and then I created a great rooftop background that would be like I was on the roof having a bit of a staycation, catching a little extra sun in the big city. Now, I also went in and sketched in a double window. Now, this I drew based on my own double window in my living room. Here's a picture of my living room. You can see the double window at the far end of the room. And if you look to the right, you can see there's a great big wall unit that has a TV in the center. My apartment was kind of the inspiration for my next 5 cards. Let's get into it. I couldn't resist tackling this one first. This is on a white card base, and we have greetings from a place of bliss. Dun dun. I think sitting in front of a TV with Netflix is a place of bliss. Now, this wall unit I created for the background here is actually from the My Monthly Hero September of 2019. This is the Cabinet of Curiosities Kit. This is that great cabinet stamp set that I thought would make a perfect wall unit. I just masked out the center portion for our TV, masked off the top. I stamped that on some Neenah 80-pound solar white cardstock using some Sandstone Hero Arts ink. And then a lot of things in the shelves are from that same stamp set. I did draw the TV, I did draw the little stereo, some books, and a vase up here. But these are all stamps from that same stamp set populating our wall unit here. I colored that whole background using my Spectrum Noir alcohol markers. So give us a little floor down here. And then I stamped our images on some Bristol Smooth cardstock and colored those with my Stabilo watercolor pens. Now, I use the Stabilo because they give me such bright colors. I thought it would be a good way to make our images pop in front of this pretty busy background here. So I stamped these all with Memento ink, colored those with my Stabilo markers, die cut them with the included dies, added them to this card front with some foam tape. I did cut this panel down to 4 inches by 5 1/4, added a thin black mat behind that before I glued that down to my white card base. I die cut the greetings from some pitch black Hero Arts cardstock. I glued that down to a scrap of white cardstock and then just fussy cut the shadow around that. I stamped a place of total bliss on another piece of white cardstock, trimmed that down to a square, added both of those to our card front using foam tape. Greetings from a place of total bliss. Ba-boom! Netflix. I think most everybody would recognize that big N showing up on their TV. I guess she's reading a TV guide. This is definitely what a staycation in New York City looks like. I couldn't wait to do this card either. This is my rooftop card. We've got Greetings from Staycation 2020. I felt a need to document this odd summer that we are all living through with its own little sentiment and date. I don't think any of us will ever forget the year 2020. Now, directly on my card base, I ink blended some fruit punch and some creamsicle and some lemon drop Hero Arts reactive inks, blended those all together for my sky. I did add a little bit of pumice stone distress ink along the bottom, just for a little bit of suggested haze in the background there. And here again is where those old dies come in handy. I have this old Doris Cityscape die in my stash, so I cut this out from a piece of just plain light gray cardstock. I colored all those buildings using my alcohol markers and then just drew through the embossing squares with a white gel pen to add some detail and windows to that building. I did die cut a piece of fun foam to go behind that, glued those both together, glued those down to my card base. I then created my little roofline wall right here out of another piece of Nina cardstock. I colored that all with my alcohol markers. Nice little caps on our roof ledge. Those are tile caps there. The edge of the roof. It looks very much like a roof there. I stamped Dad and the pot and the plant using Memento black ink on some Bristol Smooth cardstock, colored those with my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers, die cut those with the included dies. Now I did chop the original pot off of this plant, cut a little slit in our bigger pot and slipped our plant into that bigger pot. I thought that bigger pot felt more appropriate for a rooftop. I did add those to this card front using foam tape. I stamped the greetings from right in the center in the top of that sky, and then I turned to my silhouette to create this Staycation 2020 little logo for us. That's using the Brady Bunch remastered font, and I used my silhouette to go ahead and cut that out. I cut out extra blanks so I could glue them together to make little chunky sentiments. That's 3 layers glued together and then attached to our cardstock using foam tape. Greetings from Staycation 2020. Now, in the building I live in now, you're not allowed to go on the roof. The roof is kind of off limits. But when we lived in Midtown, our roof did have access, and lots of people went on the roof of our building to catch some extra sun. It's a very big thing in New York City. Greetings from Staycation 2020. I don't think I ever saw anybody drag a hammock up onto the roof, though. Okay, we have another backyard here for our third card. We've got greetings from my happy place, again with Mom and the kids in the tent and an actual real picket fence in the background. On some Nina Solar White 80-pound cardstock, I colored the grass using alcohol markers. I did ink in the sky using Hero Hughes Splash reactive ink and added some clouds with the My Favorite Things mini cloud stencil. Once I finished that background, I went ahead and die cut that fence from a piece of white cardstock. I die cut that from a piece of fun foam and glued those together, added a tiny touch of shading to the left side of our pickets there, glued those down to my cardstock. Mom and the kids and the cat are again stamped on Bristol Smooth cardstock with Memento ink. I colored those all using my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. A lot of you folks have asked to see my coloring, so here I did actually record me coloring my little Mom in her lounge chair stamp. But I don't do a lot of color blending when I'm using my Zig markers. I only have a 36 color set, so I do have a tendency to draw in my markers in the darkest part of the area. So on the pants here, I'm coloring the darkest shaded parts of her pants, and then I take a very damp brush, not much water on it at all, and then spread that color out using a brush. You can actually scratch scrub that color just a little bit, get it to spread around really nicely. After her pants, of course, I moved on to her shirt. This is, I believe, a lilac color. A quick work on the shirt, not a lot to color here, actually. I then did her hat using a light violet and took my time spreading that around. I can always get some really nice soft colors using my Zig Clean Color markers. I did a little light green for the ribbon on her hat. Then I do the lounge chair, just a simple gray lounge chair, kind of a white lounge chair, but anything white has to have some shadows on it. So I used a light gray marker to color my lounge chair and added some darker gray for the edges of the frame. And then for her hair, I used some orange and some red and some brown. So you can mix your colors right on your cardstock using your watercolor markers. I blend those all together with a brush. I colored her skin using two different colors. I started off with an oatmeal. I believe that's an oatmeal, which is a very soft brown, very light brown. I started off with that. I moved on to a flesh color to give her just a little bit more pink. I added a little bit of pink blush on her cheeks, blended those all together. Finally, I added a little bit of gray to the book. Most pages of a book are white, so it needs a little bit of gray to give it some definition. Run that shadow down the center of that book. This all came out really nice. I really like using my Zig markers. I feel like I have massive amounts of control with those. So I die cut all of those images using the matching dies. I glued my cat flat down to the grass. I glued Mom and the kids using foam tape. I die cut our greetings from white cardstock, glued that down to some pitch black cardstock, and fussy cut the shadow around that. I stamped my happy place directly on the card front using Memento ink, and then attached my greetings from using foam tape. It's amazing how much room you lose going from a 6-inch card to a 5-inch card. Just an inch, and I lost all of that room. I thought that was kind of fascinating. But I like this tent much better than my first tent. I think my tent got a little dark there. I kept obsessing over the inside of the tent should be darker than the outside of the tent, and back and forth and back and forth. I love everybody's red hair. Greetings from my happy place. Okay, that's someone's backyard. And yes, there are people in New York City who do have backyards. Now, I did my little window sketch on some Neenah 80-pound cardstock, thinking I would use alcohol markers to color that. But I didn't color it before I got my stamp set because I thought I might be able to actually stamp one of the images from our stamp set directly on that and make a basic one-layer card. So I'm not hugely proficient at alcohol markers. They sometimes scare me. I was a little nervous about coloring this entire card front using alcohol markers, so I kept putting it off, but finally I dug in and decided to do it. Here's some pictures of my coloring. I actually began at first coloring outside the window, the outdoors. There is a building just across the way from our building. There's a courtyard between our two buildings. So I colored the outdoors first through the window. Came out pretty nice. It's a little pink, but it's actually a magenta color. These are the alcohol markers I used to color the outside there. Then I moved on to the walls and the floor. My big concern here was just in trying to get a smooth, even layer of color down, which again, I'm not that practiced at coloring large areas. I channeled my best Sandy Allnock to do this card. These are the colors I used on the wall and of course the floor. I then moved on and colored Dad in his hammock. It's funny how you use the most colors on the smallest, most detailed images. I then finally used some light grays to give a little definition to my window frame on the inside. This is my living room staycation card. Greetings from Staycation 2020. I couldn't resist using that one more time. I thought this came out so nicely. I was so pleased. The greetings from is stamped on top. I did another staycation here. That's 3 layers glued together and then glued down to our floor here. I die cut our main colored panel with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. I added that to a black mat and a thin brown mat, glued that directly down to my white card base. Greetings from Staycation 2020. Now, I realize I don't have any curtains or blinds or anything in the window. I thought about it. We actually have pleated blinds in our windows. I even went so far as to make some little blinds out of vellum and thought that those would work, but I don't think they really add enough to make me think about it. I was so pleased with how this came out that I wanted to show off as much coloring as possible. So this is a bachelor. He has no curtains in his window. Trust me, there are lots of people in New York who don't have curtains in their windows. Greetings from Staycation 2020. Now, there was one background that I created that I was not able to use at all. This is actually using the die from that same cabinet of Curiosities Kit. Using that die, this is a little TV with Bugs Bunny there. Now, this did not work for this set because it didn't have a floor. There was no place to put anybody. So I thought perhaps I could string Dad's hammock across this, but that wouldn't make much sense. I don't think anybody would be hanging a hammock inside, and that's what gave me this idea. On another white card base, we've got Greetings from My Own Little Paradise. I really like this one. Now, this sky is actually blended using the Summer Twilight Palette ink pad. I just used a small blending brush and picked up the colors from that palette just on their single pad. So this is that red and orange and pink and light blue and that dark blue. I used all 5 colors in my sky here, blended them all together. I used a simple grass mask cut from a lawn fawn Grassy Hills die. Use that for the top and the bottom. I ink blended the grass in using Hero Hughes Key Lime Fizz and Green Apple reactive inks. Once my background was all colored, I reached for, this is the very first kit I ever bought from Hero Arts. This is the May of 2018 Hero Arts My Monthly Hero Kit. I knew we had a tree and branches in this kit. I dragged this out from my stash and I stamped our 2 little trees here. I stamped those over and over again using my Misty just to cover up the background. I used sandstone and cocoa Hero Arts ink, stamped a few branches in amongst the top and the 2 trees close enough so that our hammock would span between the 2 of them. Once that was all stamped, I cut that out with a stitched rectangle die, added that to a black mat. This is actually a wood grain black mat, and then down to my white card base. I stamped Dad in his hammock on a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock and started coloring him with my Zig Clean Color markers. Now, I usually color these guys with their clothes first and then everything else. For some reason, I started coloring him in reverse, and I colored his hammock first, and then I colored his skin. And as I finished his skin tones, I realized that I really liked the little white outfit he was wearing. That certainly screams summer. So I added a little gray shading to his white tennis outfit here, and I die cut him with the included die. And then I just trimmed away the hammock stand and then used a white gel pen to fill in the little spots where the hammock lines were still obvious. You can see it right there. There was a hammock line here and there. Now, it was his tennis whites that inspired my greetings here. I die cut my greetings from die using some white cardstock and then some dark green cardstock. I glued those together with a little bit offset for a little bit of a shadow there. I glued that up in the branches of the tree, and then I stamped this sentiment down on the bottom using Versamark ink, and I embossed that with white embossing powder. I think those white sentiments and Dad's tennis whites went perfectly together. Really a nice contrast to that brightly colored background. Greetings from my own little paradise. I'm so glad I got a chance to use that Summer Twilight palette stamp pad. And that's my 10 cards from the My Monthly Hero August 2020 card kit, our Staycation card kit. Actually, we've got 5 postcards and 5 cards. I'm really pleased with how all of these came out. I did manage to use every single stamp in that stamp set. I used used a lot of the dies. I even used that palette ink pad. We've got 4 dads here. We've got 3 moms, 2 kids. That ratio seems about right to me. I don't have any real puns this month, although I really love this card. I really like this card, and I really like my Staycation 2020 logo. I might have some t-shirts printed up with that. It would be perfectly appropriate. I thought it was great fun working in a little bit of a different format with the different size of those postcards, and I think we actually have quite a unique variety of cards here this month. I had a ton of fun with each and every one of these, and I hope you like them as much as I do. Please let me know which card or cards are your favorite. Now, if I've managed to ignite a spark or inspire an idea in your mind, this kit is still available at Hero Arts. Please use my links in the description down below if you do go shopping at Hero Arts. This kit turned out to be much more versatile than I originally thought it would be, and I had much fun spending a great deal of time coloring and coloring and coloring and coloring some more. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me here. I hope you enjoyed what I created for you this month. Please know that I appreciate your attention even more these days. You are the only thing keeping me going sometimes, I think. Please remember to like me, list me, pin me, post me, share me with all of your friends. Please keep yourself safe and happy and healthy. I'm sending you heaps of good blessings to you and yours. And as always, happy crafting. If you'd like more detailed information, better pictures, and product links, please visit my website at cardcutups.com.